Welcome back. Thank you so much for watching Morning Live. Now, as the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture continues, yesterday, Eskom Contract Manager Gert Opperman said that the former Acting Eskom Chief Executive Officer Matshela Koko instructed him to convince Majuba Power Station to accept coal from Tegeta that did not meet the quality specification. Meanwhile, last week at the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, or NERSA, they announced an increase in electricity tariffs by 9.41% for the 2019-2020 financial year. And in addition, they've also approved 3 electricity tariff hikes to take place in the next 3 years. Roger Lilley is the editor of Energize Magazine, and he's with us now to give us a perspective on some of the continuing debacle around Eskom. Thanks so much for coming through.
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning, South Africa.
Roger, I want to start here. So Gert Opperman, testifying at the Zondo Commission yesterday, agrees that Eskom actually in 2015, August 2015, they lied to National Treasury about Tegeta's Brakfontein mine in an effort to get that particular contract extended.
Yes.
So we're not really surprised because we know that there was quite a bit of this going on.
That's correct, yes. Yes, there was. There's been a lot of self-enrichment and personal favours and slippery deals, particularly around coal. Some very, very strange deals around coal. But yes, we're not surprised. It's good that it's coming out. It's good that a lot of the denials that have been made by previous CEOs and acting CEOs are starting to be shown to be false. And that we hope that the Zondo Commission indeed will be able to place blame on appropriate people.
Which is interesting because right now nobody is taking any sort of accountability for anything. And I mean nobody.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody is passing the buck at this stage.
Correct. Yes, everybody else blames everybody else. But you know, at the end of the day, if you're running a business as the CEO or the chairperson of a company, the buck stops with you, even if you don't make the decision personally. However, in this case, we have reason to believe that these particular individuals did make direct decisions and have forced people to do things that they didn't want to do, but felt compelled to do so.
I must say, what I particularly liked yesterday at the Zondo Commission was that the Commission didn't just accept what the technocrats are saying either.
Yes.
Because they said, why didn't you flag it? Why didn't you raise the alarm when you were given these dubious instructions? And it speaks to the whole question of accountability.
Yes, it does. But I think there's also the sort of atmosphere that must have existed in the institution at the time must have led to people being almost afraid to speak up.
But aren't those the difficult ethical questions that one has to confront?
Yes.
Especially in situations like these, because look at the consequences of those actions. Whether you chose to take the high road or whether you chose to just, suffer in silence in a little corner, it's led us to this point where we now have Eskom over 400 billion rand in debt.
Yes, that's true. And one wonders why these individuals took the route they took, but I can only imagine that the tension within the organisation must have been so that they felt that they could not speak out.
Is that enough, though? You said the buck stops with the CEO. Is it enough for the technocrats?
It's not enough, but I mean, in reality, people often do what they're instructed to do by the senior management.
Excuse me. My apologies there.
Yeah. If you lose a senior position at Eskom, it's going to be very difficult to find a senior position like that anywhere else in South Africa.
Well, it certainly might be, but, everybody has to take responsibility for what they did. Then you have the fiduciary responsibility of the board as well.
Yes.
Because we haven't spoken about them and what was allowed to happen under their watch as well.
Correct. And we don't know how much the board knew. We don't know how things were shielded from them. And so they were led to believe things that were different to reality, perhaps. We don't know.
Do they not have the responsibility then to come forward and say, we were led to believe A, when in fact the reality of the situation was D?
Yes, and I think perhaps that will still happen in the coming days at the Zondo Commission.
And let's talk about some of the more technical issues. The coal, substandard coal, reject coal that was actually sold to Eskom from the Brockfontein mine, regardless of the fact that it was costing more than it should anyway.
Exactly.
It was substandard, and yet this was allowed to go through.
Yes.
So let's talk about the price of coal for a moment. The evidence that was given was that Eskom was paying 450 Rand per ton of coal that should at least have come in at 200 Rand per ton. So is there a bigger issue there with regard to what Eskom is paying for their coal supply?
Definitely, definitely. As we know, we have some very dodgy coal deals. And I don't know how many of those have been reversed and changed subsequently. But coal price is sensitive because of the transport costs as well. So bringing the coal in by truck almost doubles the price of the coal. So, and then if you have substandard coal, it means that the thermal capability of that coal when you burn it is less than high quality coal, which means to get the same temperature you need to use more coal. And the coal is more expensive and you're using more of it at the same time. So the price just goes through the roof. On top of that, you've transported it by truck, which is the most expensive way of transporting it.
But that seems to be the norm. So obviously at some point there was a decision made that, you know, this is quite acceptable and we are happy to bear the increased cost.
You know, one also has to consider the cost of no electricity. How much does it cost if there is no electricity? So we've got to keep the power station going, they say, and therefore we're going to have to pay the highest price, but we've got to keep the power station going, because if the power station isn't going, we don't have enough capacity for the country.
But isn't that just a way of holding us to ransom?
Indeed.
To say, if we don't pay this price, then the power's going to go out. And then you have all sorts of stories that give rise to conspiracy theories. We saw this video on social media of trucks, you know, lining up for kilometers, coal trucks, waiting to deliver coal. Why is the coal not being delivered? Then at some point we were told there were no coal stockpiles, and yet coal was being exported through the Richards Bay terminal. And there are just so many stories like that, Roger, that really gets one to wonder about what is really going on.
Yes. The world price of coal has increased. And so for many miners, they would prefer to sell the coal on the export market and get paid in US dollars at higher prices than supply it to Eskom. So that's part of the problem, and that's one of the reasons why Eskom have this cost plus mine concept, because it guarantees them supply because they are part owners of the mine.
Let's talk about that. When you say they are part owners of the mine, how much of the mine do they actually own?
I can't give you a percentage, but it depends on the investment they've made in the mine. So obviously if they put a big investment into this mine, then they are part owners, they are shareholders in that mine, and they then have a claim to at least a portion of that coal. The issue is that the control of the quality of the coal, because in the same mine you can get both discard coal, which is coal you can't use, and good quality coal. And it's very difficult to tell them apart just by looking at it.
But if you look at Eskom's investment into these cost-plus mines, doesn't it then beg the question whether Eskom should not be owning these mines outright anyway?
And then perhaps wouldn't have to pay for the coal at all, because they would have paid up front.
Precisely.
Yes.
So why isn't that being done? Why hasn't that been considered?
Perhaps it has been considered. I don't know.
But isn't that a logical sort of thought process that should be followed?
Yeah, certainly it is. And I think Eskom has to answer those sorts of questions. Because you're right, it's too easy. It's been too easy for Eskom. And in a sense, this is NERSA's fault. Because the structure is such that Eskom put forward an application saying we expect to spend a certain amount of money on coal, on generating power, for buying coal and various other things. And they give that to NERSA, and NERSA allows a certain amount of money to be recovered. And that's come from the tariff, the sale of electricity. At the end of the period, however, Eskom can go back to NERSA and say, oh, we made a mistake. It actually cost us 5% more, or 10% more, or whatever it is. And therefore, NERSA now gives what is known as the RCA, the regulatory... anyway, they have an agreement where they can balance the books afterwards. And this means that, as in the case now, we have a double whammy because we have the 4.4% adjustment on the previous tariff plus the 9.41% on the new. So together we're going to pay 13.8% increase for coal, for electricity.
The general sentiment from the public is that we are being forced to pay for the mistakes, the incompetence and the corruption and whatever else being perpetrated by those who are running Eskom.
Yes, and that is perfectly true. The public are quite right. That is exactly what the status is. The public are being forced to pay that because we have no choice.
So if we were to quantify, and I wonder if anybody's ever taken the time to do this exercise, how much Eskom pays in just the upfront payments, never mind the guarantees that they issue to some of these mines, the cost-plus mines, how many power stations, how many coal mines, rather, would they have been able to buy and own outright?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that number, but certainly...
maybe something your magazine can look into.
Can look into, absolutely, yes.
And then also the other thing is the evergreen contracts. You know, what sort of an albatross is that around Eskom's neck?
Yes, you know, these contracts often seem like a good idea at the time and perhaps haven't been thought through properly to the point of, you know, how do we end this, or what is the long-term scenario going to be? But I do believe that some of those decisions were made in the best interests of the utility, just perhaps not thought through well enough.
Because in many instances it doesn't look as though it is in the interest of Eskom, because it seems that it is more beneficial to the companies that have entered into these agreements. Yeah,
yeah. You see, I think we've also got to understand that Eskom is not a miner. Eskom is an electricity generator. And so perhaps separating the idea of owning mines from an electricity generator is a good idea. The power stations need coal, and it's a good idea to buy the coal from the open market, and perhaps on some kind of arrangement where you can have a trade as you would with any other commodity.
And that idea is fine, as long as you're not paying for someone to go and purchase a mine.
Well, that's another issue, yes. Yes.
Because then where's the logic there, Roger?
Yes. Yes. So, but at the same time, the power utility wants some confidence that it has a long-term 20-year supply of coal. And therefore, some kind of shareholding in the mine gives it that comfort to say, we own part of this mine, therefore we own some of the coal in that mine, and therefore we are assured of a long-term supply of coal.
So why do we ever run out of, excuse me, coal stockpiles?
We ran out of coal stockpiles for a number of reasons. Firstly, because Eskom is broke and could not pay for coal. Secondly, because the mine...
But they own a stake in the mine. So why can't the mine, in good faith, give them the coal and have the payment later? They own a stake in the mine.
They do.
They're not going anywhere.
No. But the trouble is that some of those mines also are marginal. They're not good quality mines, and so you also have a problem from their side. So supply was an issue. But primarily Eskom has always said that the coal problem is a problem of money. The fact that there isn't sufficient money, that's why the tariffs have to go up all the time. They need this certain amount of money as a reserve to be able to buy coal up front.
I'm a skeptic, Roger. I don't buy that.
Yeah.
You can't say you don't have money, and yet you would trigger deals that would actually cost you 400 million rand right off the bat for nothing.
Well, not for nothing. Not for nothing.
Right off the bat.
Okay. On the day you make the payment, you don't get anything. But yeah, they're looking ahead. Yes. As I say, the whole idea is to have a shareholding in the mine so that you have some confidence that the miner is not going to look around the market and say, oops, I can sell all my coal offshore and get more money for it in US dollars, which I'd rather have than rand for whatever reason. And then you're left high and dry as the power generator.
Well, power generator seems to be high and dry right now from time to time.
Well, this is the point. And I think the benefit now of breaking Eskom into 3 sections, where we can see the generation part of Eskom more transparently and see what it really costs. Because we also don't know what sort of cross-subsidization there's been between the divisions of Eskom. When transmission can buy electricity from any source, then of course that's going to be a big help, because now we're not going to be reliant on Eskom power generators exclusively. Don't forget, we also have a problem with a number of Eskom power generators that need to go offline and should have gone offline already, because they don't meet the basic environmental specifications.
Well, Roger, we can go on forever and a day, you and I. Thanks to Roger Lilley, editor of Energize Magazine, discussing some of the ongoing issues at Eskom. And it's over to Leanne now for the news.